Hi, my name's Erin Johnson and I'm the founder of Artworks Fine Art Studio. Today we're going to be working from my home studio and we are going to be working on how to draw an image from a photograph. We're going to be using simple shapes and working together. So what I'm going to need you to do is grab a pencil, any pencil will do, an eraser, and a couple pieces of paper. Any paper. We're just going to be practicing and learning how to approach a picture from start to finish. I'm looking forward to working with you today. Before we start drawing, we actually want to warm up a little bit. Now when we draw, we use what's called simple shapes. We look at the shapes within an object and not just the object as a whole. It helps with composition and building your piece slowly. What we're going to do to start is just some simple shapes, like I said. Some ovals, maybe some squares, and just warming up. Circles, some triangles. Now one helpful little tip is if you're working at a table at a flat surface, it's kind of nice sometimes to put a separate piece of scrap paper over your nicer paper to kind of create these shapes. Now notice how I do go over and draw a shape more than once. Sometimes it takes a couple tries to get a good shape like that. I'm going to continue through, just warming up, filling up my piece of paper, creating fun shapes. Art is like a sport. You want to warm up your muscles a little bit before getting started. So once you feel like you've kind of created enough shapes, feel a little bit ready to begin your drawing, let's go ahead and start. So when we begin a drawing, what we want to do is look at the largest shapes first. Now I don't want you to work along with me just yet. I'm going to show you the process of looking at a photo and drawing it. When we look at this, actually the largest shape in this whole image would be your horizon line behind the swan. That breaks it down, and on your piece of paper that really kind of helps you place where the swan is going to be. You can always kind of measure if you're working within the same size, but for today we're just going to eyeball it. Then we want to look at the shapes within the swan. Now when I look at this swan, I kind of see this big oval in here. That's probably the largest shape. Then I'm going to move on to kind of a smaller oval within the head here. I see, then you can kind of maybe make another circle in here and then connect the lines. So already we've placed the swan and gotten the right proportion sizes just by using our simple shapes. Then from there we can add kind of the smaller pieces. Now there's a difference between organic shapes and regular shapes. When I say organic shapes, they're shapes that aren't really necessarily like an oval, a circle, or a square. They're kind of different shapes that don't have names. And that's what I'll refer to as organic shapes. Otherwise, in this, we have pretty much simple shapes like circles and ovals, and then two organic shapes over here. You can also add another organic shape with the feathers up here and in there. And so we're almost completed with the swan. We just have the final little details of the beak and kind of this detail in the eye. And that is all you need for your drawing. So using what we just learned, using simple shapes to build an image, now I want you to follow along with me and we're going to build it together. So I'm going to use my sheet of paper. And again, remember, I wanted to start with the horizon line. Now, if I compare these two images and line up my paper, I can see that the horizon line falls just about in here. And I'm going to draw that full line across. Again, you can go over it a couple times if you feel you need to. And when I compare where the horizon line is to my first shape, it's probably about, this far in, and it's going to be a shape sort of like that. Now from that shape, remember the next biggest shape was kind of this circle in here. So I'm going to build that circle right in there. They're the bottom falls even along the water, right in there. The head, if I compare where the head is, maybe the side here, and draw an invisible line, do you see how it connects, it equals kind of where they come together, these two shapes? So I'm going to have the head and draw it right up in here. Now notice my lines are not perfect. I have to go over them a couple times. But the one trick that's super important is that you draw as lightly as you possibly can, because you will be erasing a lot of these lines, and especially if you make a mistake, you want to be able to erase it. If you draw too dark, you will not be able to erase it. So moving from that head onto the next biggest shape, the neck, or the next most important shape, I might say, I'm going to add it in, and whoops, I kind of didn't get that curve as nicely as I wanted. I'm going to go on to the other side. It's also important to see where lines start and where they stop. So you notice how the line starts and it touches the bottom of the head here. I'm going to make my head a little bit bigger, and then comes and touches the front top of that other oval. Next, I'm going to kind of add in the shape here. I'm going to add in this kind of funky shape. And again, it's a straight line kind of across the bottom. And then remember my organic shapes. Now I'm not going to follow that exactly, every single curve. You can if you want to, but I'm going to be kind of loose about it and make it fun. And then I have the shape in there. And finally, I'm going to draw in my beak. I'm going to have the eye as a reference, and then create that almost like that triangle. Now, if there's anything that stands out that you feel like you need to change, you can go ahead and change it. But now is when I'm actually going to use my eraser and start erasing some of the lines that you don't necessarily see. So in the neck, you wouldn't see that line of the head. In here, you don't see the line. I don't want the horizon line in the body. And again, this is why it's very important to draw lightly. Now I erased this line, but after looking at it, I kind of do want to keep a softer line in there. And now that I've finished the basic drawing of the swan, I am going to need to erase all of these lines that I created to show the shapes, because I want to see the details of the image and draw it from there. So when I look carefully, I notice that my neck is probably a little bit too wide. So I'm going to take in the neck slightly here and bring it then down. Again, erasing any kind of lines I don't want. And getting the fine details. I can also see here, this wing comes out in front. So I'm going to want to kind of show that there and start to get some of the texture and the details. I don't want this line there, in actual fact. Kind of showing the soft lines by adding a little bit of texture from the pencil. Getting in some of the feathers here, and now I can kind of darken the eye, get some of that detail, clean up these lines just a little bit. Also, the beak kind of comes into the face, so I'm going to show that. And this might be a little bit bigger. And there you go. I feel like this is starting to look a little bit more complete. You could go on and add some of the texture of the water, some of the waves and the reflection. You can kind of bring it as far as you want. But once you get your basic drawing, you've got a great start. And there we go. There's our completed swan. Go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back. Great job.